wonderful in me. It's something awesome and incredible that only He will get the glory. God is doing something wonderful, incredible and awesome. God is doing something wonderful in me. Hey, come on, help me sing. God is doing something wonderful in me. God is doing something wonderful in me. Something awesome and incredible that only He will get the glory. God is doing something wonderful, incredible and awesome. Come on and clap your hands, everybody. Come on. Come on, Dallas, make some noise. Forest Baptist Church. God is doing something wonderful in me. God is doing something wonderful in me. Something awesome and incredible that only He will get the glory. God is doing something wonderful, incredible and awesome. God is doing something wonderful in me. Oh, yeah. God is doing something wonderful in me. Oh, yes, He is. God is doing something wonderful in me. Awesome and incredible. God is doing something wonderful. Doing something wonderful. Yes, He is. Doing something wonderful. Get out your seat. Go grab somebody by the hand. Look them in the eye and smile at them and say, God is doing something. God is doing something wonderful to me. Oh, yes, He is. God is doing something wonderful in me. Oh, something awesome and incredible. He's gonna get the glory. Something wonderful. Wave your hand at your Lord. He's doing something wonderful. Yeah. He's doing something wonderful. Ooh, yeah, yeah. Now let me show you this next part. It goes like this. It says, so wonderful. So wonderful. It's so beautiful. So beautiful. It's so marvelous. Say, so marvelous. God is doing it on the inside. God is doing it on the inside. So wonderful. So wonderful. So beautiful. So beautiful. So marvelous. God is doing it on the inside. God is doing it on the inside. So wonderful. So beautiful. So marvelous. God is doing it on the inside of me. God is doing it on the inside of me. So wonderful. So wonderful, yeah. So marvelous. God is doing it on the inside of me. God is doing it on the inside of me. Yes, He is, yeah. How many know that He's doing wonderful things, yeah? He's doing wonderful things, yeah. Oh, He's doing it on the inside.
Good morning and welcome to the Daily Download. I'm your host, Dr. Darrell R. Pulley. This is the day the Lord has made. We are rejoicing and we are glad in it. Thank you so much for being a part of the Daily Download, because we know the truth today that the Lord daily loads us with His benefits. And I'm telling you, today is already loaded. It is already jam-packed with the lessons and the blessings of God. And my heart and my mind are open to receive all the good that God has for me. And I am praying with you today that your heart and your mind are open and receptive to divine unlimited ideas. If this is your first time watching the Daily Download, we encourage you to like, follow, and share the Dr. Darrell R. Pulley page so that you can get notifications of when we are on Facebook Live. And if you're one of our regular Kingdom citizens, one of our regular students of truth, you know what time it is. It is time to share this on your page with a family member, a friend, a neighbor, a co-worker, a classmate, or a church member, and let them know that I'm looking at the Daily Download with Dr. Darrell R. Pulley, and I invite you to watch the Daily Download live with me. So we're just going to get personal this morning. Good morning to Renee Denard Cole. Welcome to the Daily Download. Good morning to Cherie Makita, and welcome to the Daily Download. Andrew Booth. Welcome to the Daily Download. Mother Linda Johnson, Constance, welcome. Good morning. Good morning, Thelma Bootsy. Welcome to the Daily Download. Pastor Vince Martin, thank you so much for watching with us today. Welcome again to the Daily Download. We're so grateful that you're here. Patty, thank you for watching the Daily Download. Thomas Lewis, good morning to you. Yes, good morning to Elder Diane Alexander, Bishop A. Bernard Hector. Good morning and welcome again to the Daily Download. Beverly, Tabit, Juanita, Maria Maxwell, welcome to the Daily Download. Juanita Stevens, thank you so much for being a part of the Daily Download. Tiny Thelma Rush, thank you for being a part of the Daily Download. I appreciate you and I thank you so much for being a part of this. Amen. Good morning, Donna. Welcome to the Daily Download. So we've been talking about the two most powerful words that a person can say, and that is I am. Come on, say it again. I am. One more time. I am. Those are the two most powerful words that anybody can say. Because when you say I am, you are getting in touch with the truth of your being, the innermost part of who you are, the essence of your being. And because we're made in the image and in the likeness of God, we get our amness from the I am that I am. In this series, we're talking about I am that I am sanctification. I am that I am Mekadesh, Jehovah Mekadesh, Yahweh Mekadesh, which means I am your sanctifier. I am sanctification. And so we've learned that sanctification means to be set apart for service. That we've been set apart because there's a service that we are called to do. But there are many ideas, erroneous ideas, limiting beliefs, and faulty perceptions that keep us from doing what it is that God has called us to do, that keep us from being who it is that God has destined us to be. So when we sanctify ourselves, that means we're setting ourselves apart from a particular thought, feeling, belief, idea, and that we are separating ourselves from that idea so that we can live our best lives and be our best selves. Today, our prayer is sanctify me from classism. Come on, say it again. Sanctify me from classism. This is a prayer to God. The God, I desire to go where you desire for me to go. Say what you desire for me to say. Be who you destined me to be. And do what you destined me to do. But there's this idea of classism that's in my consciousness, that's in my subconsciousness, that needs to be removed, that I need to be sanctified from so that I can actually do what it is that God has called me to do. Good morning, Winifred. Good morning, Deborah. Good morning, Bishop Saunders. Sanctify me from classism. And we're going to talk about three different aspects of classism today that stand in the way from us really doing what it is that God has called us. And let me tell you, anything that stands in the way, anybody that stands in the way from you fulfilling your purpose, any idea that stands in the way for you really manifesting the call of God upon your life, you need to be sanctified from. You need to separate yourself from it, which means see yourself apart from that idea. All right? And so with classism, pulley point number one, classism has a lot to do with education. Pulley point number one is education. Now let me say this. When God has called you to do something, do not allow education, which is a part of classism, to stand in the way. Some people with that education, it is that they are so pursuing education that they feel that education is going to make them somebody that they are not. You know how they were in the garden, that the tree, with the fruit of the tree was presented to make them wise. And so they thought that something outside of them, eating of the fruit of the tree, was going to make them wise. Separate separate yourself from the idea that education is going to make you something that you are not. You're already a spiritual being. You're already a child of God. You're already made in the image and likeness of God. And let me tell you, education is good. Knowledge is power. But education is only going to bring out what is already within. And that's what education means, to draw out what is already within. But education, having a degree, is not going to make you something that you are not. It's only going to enhance who you already are. So some people, their pursuit of education stands in the way of them doing what God called them to do. You only need as much education as you need to fulfill the purpose that God called you to fulfill. Some people, with what God has called them to do, they need a PhD. For some people, with what God has called them to do, they need a GED. And it doesn't matter whether it's a GED or a PhD, that I'm pursuing the education that I need to fulfill the purpose of God for my life. Everybody's not going to go to college. And I'm telling you, I'm an advocate of college. You know, I have put children through college. My son is currently in college. But as a parent, I accepted the idea that every child is not going to thrive in college. That some people need to go to a technical school. Some of my students, even when I was assistant principal at St. Francis, they said, Dr. Pulley, I don't desire to go to college. I desire to go into the armed services. Or I desire to do something that's a trade, but I don't desire to go to. So sometimes we think that education, a formal education, is what's going to make us. But who you are as a child of God is not dependent on your education. Allow education to enhance you, but don't become so obsessed with these degrees and these pieces of paper that you think it makes you better than somebody else who may not have as much education. Or don't allow yourself to feel less than because maybe you didn't get the PhD that you had planned on getting or that your family desired for you to get. Do not allow education, the classism. Yes, learn every day, grow every day, increase your wisdom and knowledge and understanding, but do not allow yourself the erroneous idea to think that education is going to make you or break you. There are people who are multimillionaires who never took a college course. It depends on what your purpose is. So pursue your education based upon the knowledge of who you are and the purpose that God has for your life. And so therefore, do not put yourself above other people because you have education, or don't put other people below you because they may not have as much education as you have, or never feel less than somebody else because they have more education than you have. That's a part of classism. Sanctify yourself from classism. Separate yourself from the erroneous idea that education is going to make me or break me. Can I tell you why I go by Dr. Pulley? Because it's a part of my purpose. What God said to me is that brown boys and girls that look like me, they need to know, they need to touch, they need to interact with somebody who is a doctor. And so you go and get your terminal degree, become a doctor, so that in the mind of some of those black and brown boys and girls who think that education or being a doctor is unattainable, and they can say, well, I know Dr. Pulley, and Dr. Pulley has a doctorate degree. And if Dr. Pulley, who looks like me, can have a doctorate degree, then anybody can have a doctorate degree. And so that was why I was so persistent, because with the CAS, which is a Certificate of Advanced Study, I was making the same money with the CAS as I got when I got my doctorate degree, a master's plus 30. There was no difference in my salary in terms of the educational arena. But I went through to get the doctorate degree because my grandmother, and I'm going to tell you, she was persistent. She said, you need to be a doctor because there needs to be more African-American males with their doctorate degree. And because I have different titles and positions, you know, some people say Pastor Pulley and Reverend Pulley and Bishop Pulley and all of that. Doctor just became one central title that I can use in any setting. It's not for ego, it's not for arrogance, it's not for pride, but it's a part of my purpose. It's a part of what God called me to do. So you need as much education as you need in order to fulfill the purpose that God has called you to fulfill. So Pulley point number 2 is profession. That's right. In this consciousness, there's this idea of the white collar workers and the blue collar workers. I don't know if some of y'all remember that. Some of my younger audience may not be as familiar with that. But in the collective consciousness, even in the United States of America, is this classism system of whether you are a white collar worker or whether you're a blue collar worker. The white collar workers were more of your business men and women, those who wore the white shirt and the tie, those who had higher positions and titles of authority, whereas your blue-collar workers were your manual laborers, those that work with their hands and not as much with their heads. And so there was this separation, this classism that separated the white-collar workers who were your educators, your doctors, your lawyers, as opposed to your blue-collar workers who were your auto mechanics and your engineers and sanitation workers. And there was this idea that the white-collar workers were better than the blue-collar workers. And some people are pursuing, quote unquote, those positions of power and authority in a white collar position because they feel like that's greater than a blue collar. But where their real heart is, where their real passion is working with their hands. But because of the idea that the blue collar worker is less than the white collar worker, they're pursuing something out of ego that's not even their passion, that's not even what they're called to do. So sanctify us from this classism, from this idea that the white collar worker is better than the blue collar worker, or the blue collar worker is less than the white collar worker. The scripture that we have for this week, and that's where the root is, Galatians 3:28. It says, in Christ there is neither Jew nor Greek. And so we talked about yesterday being sanctified from religiosity. It also says there is neither bond nor free, which means that this class system of the slaves and those that are free and the servants and the masters and the blue collar and the white collar workers, that all of those things that would separate us and divide us, separate ourselves from the things that would separate us, separate ourselves from the things that divide us, sanctify us from classism. Because even though it's not spoken and it's not as apparent as it used to be, it is still there in the collective consciousness. And for people to really fulfill their destiny, for people to really accomplish their purpose, this idea of classism, and even in, there's the lower class, the middle class, and they created the upper middle class, and then there's the rich and the wealthy, and then we've got all these ideas in our minds as it relates to classism that keep us separate from one another, that keep us separate from our purpose. So sanctify us, cleanse us, set us apart from these erroneous ideas that separate us, that divide us, that keep us from doing what it is that God has called us to do. I don't care whether it's a blue collar, white collar, or no collar. If God called you to do it, do it. It doesn't matter what the profession is. I'm doing what God has called me to do. I've been set apart for God's service. And if this is the way that God has called me to serve, then I am willing, I am ready, and I am able to do so. Pulley point number 3. All right, so pulley point number 1 was education. Sanctify me from the idea that education is going to make or break me. Pulley point number 2 is profession. Sanctify me from the idea that one profession is greater than another profession. The greatest profession that you can have is doing what God called you to do. The greatest profession that you can have is being a laborer in God's vineyard, accomplishing the purpose that God has called you to fulfill. That is the greatest profession that you can have. And pulley point number 3 is economics, is money, is salary, which means that people begin to assign the worth and the value of what they do based upon the money they make. And so some people desire to be teachers, but because teachers don't make a lot of money, then I'm not going to be a teacher. But that's what their passion is. And so I'm saying to you today, don't allow economics, don't allow money to stop you from doing what's in your heart to do. Because you can make all the money and make 6 figures, but if it's not your passion, if it's not the desire of your heart, if it's not the purpose for which you were born, you'll have all the money and still will feel empty and still feel unfulfilled. You look at people who are at the top of their fields and they commit suicide. They're making money and people say, if I was making that kind of money, I would do this and I would go there and I would have that. But I will not allow economics. I will not allow money to stand in the way of me being what God has called me to be and doing what God has called me to do. If God has called you to retire, retire and do that second career that you always desire to do. If God is calling you to change careers, regardless of the bottom line or the dollar, know that God is your source. That God is your source. Everyone else is a resource. So I will not allow how much money I make, the house I live in, the car I drive, to determine whether or not I'm going to do what God has called me to do. For years, I did not go into full-time ministry because I did not think that ministry was going to be able to pay me and take care of my family and my children. So for years, I stayed in other professions, education, psychology, because I saw those as stable incomes. That was in my subconscious. It came from my mom, the idea that ministry doesn't pay well and that you're going to be dependent on somebody else to make ends meet. And so I had to sanctify myself from that idea. If I did not set myself apart from that idea that I can't be prosperous doing what God called me to do, I would not be in full-time ministry today. I would still be doing something else and doing ministry. But there's a place in consciousness. There's a place in God where you know that God is your source. And there are people who have business ideas, multi-million-dollar business ideas, and they're not pursuing them, but staying in a dead-end job or a dead-end position because of the money and because of fear that if I step out on faith, that it may not work out. But I'm telling you, it is better to step out on faith and do what is in your heart to do what God has called you to do, than play it safe and be unhappy and be depressed and feel unfulfilled. But you got all of these physical things. Behold, the kingdom of God is within you. Do what's in your heart to do, regardless of the money, and I'm telling you, the money will come. Many of us have ideas to help people, that our passion is to help people, to make a difference, but we're not making that difference because we're stuck in something because of societal norms, because of money, because of the bills. We're stuck in something that is not bringing us happiness. But I'm telling you, if you do what God has told you to do, the idea of you being authentic and being your true self will draw prosperity to you, will draw wealth to you, will draw increase, abundance, overflow, and more than enough. It's something that is wealthy about fulfilling your purpose. There's something that is attractive about you being who God has destined you to be, that draws people to you, that draws resources to you, as opposed to, oh my God, it's Monday, I got to go to work again. Oh my God, I got to put in another. It's nothing, fulfilling about that, but you're just doing the same thing day in and day out, and you're not feeling the fulfillment from it. Whatever you're doing, enjoy doing what you're doing. Feel the passion for it, the energy for it. And if you don't have that, it's time to pray. It's time to seek God's face and say, how long will I not pursue my dream? How long will I not fulfill the purpose of God for my life because of education, because of a professional title, or because of economics, because of money? And so sanctify me, God, from classism. Sanctify me from classism. I remember, and I feel, vulnerable or something today. I just got testimony after testimony. I had to let go of driving because I'm not good at driving, and you are glad that I do not drive. The world, the city of St. Petersburg, the state of Florida, the United States of America is a safer place because I do not drive. And so I'm not good at it, and I don't like it. I don't enjoy driving. When I get into that kind of motion, I get creativity, and I'm not focused on what I'm doing, and before I know it, I've took my foot off the brake, and I'm bam in the back of somebody. And so I had to let go of driving because it's not who I am, and it's not what I enjoy doing, and I'm not good at it. But there was so much classism in my own consciousness that was attached to driving, that driving made me feel independent, that the type of car that I drove was a certain status symbol. I had a Mercedes, I had a a Jaguar. That all of these things were attached to driving, was attached to the car that I was driving. There was so much classism that was attached to that I was not fulfilling my purpose of not driving. That's not what I'm called to do. That's not what's good for me. That's not what good is good for you. But as I sanctified myself from classism, as I begin to let go of that I can be independent and not drive, that I can be successful and not drive. And so now that I have a drive and I ride with people and I Uber and I Lyft, I get a chance to meet people. I get a chance to fellowship with people. I get a chance to send emails and text messages and phone calls and things in motion. Whereas before I was trying to do that and drive. But classism was keeping me stuck because in my mind, in my subconscious, driving meant independence and the car that I drove meant success. And I'm saying to you today, release classism. Sanctify yourself from that. Let go of these erroneous ideas that something outside of you is going to make you something that you are not already. I love you so much. God bless you. Thank you so much for being a part of the Daily Download. Remember to share this on your page because we all need to be sanctified from classism. And so when we know that we're not better than anybody and nobody else is better than us, but the greatest thing that we can do is fulfill our purpose and what it is that God has created us to do. I love you so much. God bless you. Thank you for sharing this on your page. Share this message with somebody that you know needs to hear it. Somebody that's struggling with these ideas, these societal norms and the social construct. Send it to them today. Share this on your page today. Remember, our goal is 500 views today, and we've been real short of that. So I need my kingdom citizens, my students of truth, to really blast this out today. Sanctify me from classism. Thank you for those who continue to sow into the Daily Download. We are grateful and appreciative that you help make this possible every day because it is a lot doing this every day. And thank you so much for those that sow into it. If you're looking for a shorter version of the Daily Download, find us on Instagram, find us on Twitter, subscribe to our YouTube channel, Dr. Pulley Ministries, and you can get back daily downloads that you may have missed in any particular series. And also go to our website, www.drpulley.com and see the books and the resources that we have, as well as our schedule and calendar of events. I love you so much. God bless you. Until tomorrow morning at 6:30 a.m. Remember, God is doing something wonderful in me, and God is doing something wonderful in you.